Camilla Parker has had a really hard time the last few weeks. And from what people are saying, things are going to get even worse. There is a big story happening at Buckingham Palace right now that has been building for 30 years. And it involves two people who nobody expected to work together: Princess Anne and Prince William. The person they are targeting is Camilla. She sits next to King Charles at every official event. She was the other woman for many years and then became Queen Consort. But sources say that her position is not as safe as she wants everyone to think. This is Royal Daily Report. Let's talk about what started all of this. There was one moment that made people in the palace pay attention. 3 weeks before this story came out, a senior palace worker made a phone call that was very strange. Not to news people, not to a government person, not to anyone normal. They called a lawyer for Princess Anne. The call was about Camilla. It lasted less than 10 minutes, short and to the point. People say this was the kind of call you make when you already decided something and just need to check that you can do it. That call, they say, was the first step in something much bigger. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report for more inside stories. Now, Anne has been in this family for over 70 years. She saw everything happen in real time. The affairs, the separation, the big interview, the divorce, Diana's death. She kept her feelings private and stayed professional about everything. So people ask, why now? Why 2026? Why after 30 years is she making moves? Sources say there are two reasons. First, William's job in this family has changed a lot in the last 18 months. He is not just waiting anymore. He makes real money decisions with real results. You can see this best with the Duchy of Cornwall. That is £1.2 billion in land, property, and money. William controls all of it. He does not need to ask Charles or anyone else for permission. When William took control of the duchy after Queen Elizabeth died, he made a big change. He removed Annabel Elliot from the payroll. She was Camilla's sister. She was an interior designer. She worked on duchy properties for Charles for nearly 20 years. She made between £19,000 and £82,000 each year depending on the project. The moment William took over, Annabel was gone from the records. No public fight, no statement, just gone. William did not hire someone neutral. He brought in his own people, his friends, godparents of his children, people loyal only to him. Royal experts noticed right away. They said it was causing big problems inside the palace. That decision sent a message that did not need explaining. Anne saw this happen. She agreed with it completely. People say this decision opened a conversation between Anne and William that they had been waiting to have. Both of them, for different reasons, had reached the same point. Both were done waiting. The second reason is Diana. August 31st, 2027, will be 30 years since Diana died in that Paris tunnel. 30 years since William, at 15 years old, had to walk behind his mother's coffin through London streets, in front of the whole world. He is now 43 years old. He is a husband and a father of 3. In 28 years of public life, he has never made a direct statement about his feelings on Camilla and what his mother went through. He never had to. His actions have said it for years. Sources say Anne decided a few months ago that she was done. Done letting the institution's loyalty win over what she really believes. Done watching Camilla sit in spaces that should belong to Diana's memory, instead of the woman who helped cause Diana's suffering. Anne watched Diana up close during those years. She has her own sadness about it. She decided it was time to act. When she did, she had something that is making certain people in Buckingham Palace very nervous. There is a room at Windsor Castle called the Royal Archives. No tourists, no film crews, no public can go there. It has the real, unedited, private written history of the British royal family. Letters, diaries, internal emails. The written record of what really happened inside the institution during the most difficult decades of the 1900s. This includes the years when Charles and Diana's marriage was clearly falling apart. Princess Anne has access to these materials at a level very few people outside the immediate family have. Sources say she has been reading them. The real question is, what exactly is in those archives from the 1980s and 1990s that certain people do not want people to see right now? The main facts are already public knowledge. The 1992 separation, the Camilla Gate tapes in 1993, Charles's TV confession in 1994, Diana's big interview in 1995, the divorce in 1996, Diana's death in 1997. All of that is written about, studied and debated across 30 years of books and documentaries. What sources say is in those archives goes deeper than just the main facts. It is the details. The private written record from that time of who knew what, when they knew it, who made it happen, and how. The inside look at a situation that the public only partially knows about. How Diana's problems were received and handled. How the institution managed a situation where one of its members was suffering in a very public and very documented way. Sources who know about Anne's archive review say the materials tell a story about how the institution failed. It goes much further than anything public has ever documented. Anne believes that story should be part of the complete historical record, not changed or softened because people want it to stay hidden. Camilla is one of those people. A complete and accurate history of Charles and Diana's marriage is not comfortable for the current queen consort, and it never was. The difference now is that the person asking if that record should stay hidden is someone with the access, the power, and personal reasons to actually do something about it. Royal Daily Report keeps you informed. Don't miss any updates. Subscribe now. Sources say Anne's position is simple. The history of that period should be complete and unedited. The woman now sitting beside the king at every state event has no right to control how the most painful part of Diana's life is remembered. That is where Anne stands. And sources say this has big results for Camilla that go way beyond property or payroll issues. Now let's talk about what William is doing at the same time. This is where the story gets even more complex. The Duchy of Cornwall made about £30 million in 2025 alone. Tenant farms, holiday cottages, islands, land rights, business investments, built up over nearly 700 years. Every pound controlled only by William. Sources say he is using that control in a way that is making Camilla's people sit up and notice. The Annabel Elliot removal was the opening move, and it was important by itself. But sources say what came next was much bigger. Access to crown events, spots at official royal occasions, invitations that Camilla's family used to get, quietly taken away. Appearances where Parker Bowles' family members expected to be, restructured without explanation. The same slow, careful, completely deniable cutting off of access that happened with Elliot is now being applied everywhere. Every connection between Camilla's family and the institution William controls. Nothing that makes a big headline by itself. Everything that adds up to something very clear when you look at the full picture. And then there is the Diana part of what William is doing with money. Sources say this is completely on purpose. William has been quietly moving certain duchy money toward causes Diana originally championed. Mental health, homelessness, HIV awareness. The causes Diana made her own during her lifetime. The ones the establishment resisted her supporting because they thought they were too serious and too political for a senior royal to engage with directly. Diana supported them anyway, and paid an institutional price for it. Now her son controls £1.2 billion in assets and $30 million in yearly income. Forces say he is putting some of that toward exactly the places his mother pointed to when the institution she belonged to was actively trying to contain her. Sources say Anne has privately expressed what you would just call satisfaction if she was a less disciplined person. Because what Anne is allegedly doing with the archives and what William is allegedly doing with the duchy represent what sources call a two-front operation: history and money, the past and the future, both allegedly being changed at the same time by the two people in this family with the most personal reasons to change them. And Camilla is caught right in the middle. Her official position is being affected too. This part of the story is worth paying close attention to because it is subtle and easy to miss unless you are looking for it. When Camilla walked into Westminster Abbey on May 6, 2023, wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, Queen Elizabeth's personal favorite, the one that appeared on British money for decades, it was a statement. A carefully chosen signal that Camilla had arrived, that her position was fully legitimate, that the rehabilitation was complete. For her supporters, it was a triumphant moment. For others inside that palace, sources say it was a clock starting. Because that tiara will one day sit on Catherine's head as queen consort. When that happens, the symbolic transfer will be so total and so clear that everything Camilla's coronation moment represented will effectively be erased. Sources say Anne and William both understand that perfectly. They are not waiting passively for that day to come. Because in royal life, symbols are not just decoration. They are power. The specific objects, ceremonies, and charities associated with the crown tell something to the institution and to the public. They say who matters, who belongs, and whose legacy continues. Camilla has spent 2 decades collecting those symbols: royal charities, charitable associations, ceremonial roles that give her position weight and legitimacy beyond just being Charles's wife. Sources say that collection is allegedly being stopped. When Queen Elizabeth died, she held hundreds of royal charities. The redistribution of those charities among working royals has been going on since 2022. Sources say Anne has allegedly been involved in certain charity decisions in ways that have quietly shaped that redistribution. Specific high-profile charities that were being given to Camilla allegedly were sent somewhere else. Not through any public decision that you could point to. Just a quiet change that sources describe as reflecting what Anne and William want, rather than just logistics. In 2025, Charles gave William and Catherine the power to issue royal warrants. This is the ability to publicly endorse brands and institutions on behalf of the crown. This is a privilege that kings have historically kept carefully. Giving it to William and Kate was a public signal about where the crown's symbolic weight is being deliberately moved toward the next generation, toward William and Catherine, away from the current reign and everything connected with it, including Camilla. Sources also say that decisions currently being made about how the reign of Charles III is being documented are reflecting William and Anne's priorities about how this period should be remembered. Who gets centered? Who becomes unimportant? Whose presence in the visual record is prominent, and whose is quietly made smaller? Royal history is shaped by what gets saved and how. The visual record of a reign becomes the historical record. The historical record becomes legacy. Camilla's legacy sources say, is allegedly being shaped right now by people with very specific ideas about what it should contain. And sources describe her private reaction to all these moves as the response of someone watching their own carefully built image being methodically and permanently taken apart. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 quiet ones. Each one can be denied on its own, but together they are devastating. Then there is her personal situation, which tells its own story. Camilla sold Ray Mill house. No press release, no magazine feature, no carefully managed announcement. Just a property that appeared for sale and disappeared from her portfolio. The Wiltshire home she had owned since before she married Charles. The place she publicly said was her personal escape. The garden she once called the best therapy in the world. Gone. And sources say that sale tells you more about where Camilla's head is right now than anything she has said publicly in months. People do not sell their personal safe places casually. They do not give up the one place that belongs entirely to them, that existed before everything that came after, unless something has changed very much in how they see their own future. Right now, Camilla lives in multiple royal homes as a normal thing. Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Sandringham, Balmoral. The full set of homes of a reigning queen consort with access to the most important private royal properties that exist. That picture changes completely when Charles dies. Sandringham passes to William. Balmoral passes to William. Buckingham Palace becomes William and Catherine's primary official home. The properties Camilla currently lives in as a right become properties she can only get into if William invites her. Sources say her likely inheritance is Clarence House, valued at about £72 million, and Highgrove valued at around £39 million. Significant assets by any normal measure. Completely not enough to replace the position she currently has. She would go from queen consort with the full power of the monarchy behind her to a private citizen, a former queen, living in 2 houses at the choice of a man who grew up watching what she did to his mother. Sources say Camilla understands this math very clearly. The family dimension makes everything worse. Annabel Elliot gone from the duchy payroll. Tom Parker Bowles's access to royal spaces allegedly finished following the Balmoral situation. The Parker Bowles family's broader closeness to crown events quietly becoming smaller. Camilla spent 20 years building a network of access and connection for her children and siblings inside the institution she married into. Sources say William is taking it apart piece by piece, with a patience and thoroughness that shows genuine long-term intention rather than temporary anger. And then there is the Sarah Ferguson situation, which has become a problem Camilla genuinely cannot handle her way out of. Ferguson's name appears in the Epstein files released by the United States Department of Justice. There is no evidence of criminal wrongdoing on her part, but the connection is real and documented. And in the situation with Andrew's arrest and the ongoing institutional problems, sources say William has made his position completely clear to Camilla. Distance yourself from Ferguson publicly and permanently, or accept the results of the connection. Camilla has not fully obeyed. She sees ending a friendship that goes before her entire royal life as both personally impossible and fundamentally unfair. William sees her continued loyalty to Ferguson as proof of exactly the kind of judgment problem that justifies his concerns about Camilla's fitness to represent the institution going forward. That standoff is unresolved, and sources say it is costing Camilla influence inside the palace with every week it continues. For exclusive royal updates, subscribe to Royal Daily Report. the source for Palace News. Now here is where the story gets genuinely complicated. Sitting in the middle of all of this is Charles. Charles's position in this situation is one of the more painful things to look at honestly. He made a phone call to Anne in February of this year that sources describe as one of the most difficult conversations between the two siblings in decades. Not angry, not accusing, quiet and pained. The call of a man who understands exactly what his sister is doing and exactly why she is doing it, and finds himself completely unable to argue against it with any real conviction. The call lasted 40 minutes and ended with nothing solved. That detail alone tells you a great deal about where Charles actually stands. He is 76 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer in February 2024. The specific type has never been publicly said, but treatment continued throughout 2024 and into 2025. He has kept up his public duties across that period with genuine discipline. But discipline is not the same as strength. Keeping up appearances is not the same as having the power to fight on multiple fronts at the same time. Sources say his energy for managing complex internal family problems has become much smaller over the past 18 months, and protecting Camilla from what William and Anne are allegedly doing requires exactly the kind of sustained, repeated conflict-absorbing engagement he is least equipped for right now. Protecting Camilla would mean telling William to restore access and privileges to people William deliberately removed. William would not obey, and Charles knows it. It would mean telling Anne to stop whatever she is allegedly doing with the archives. Anne would not obey, and Charles knows that too. It would mean positioning himself publicly against both his heir and his sister at the same time, in defense of the woman that millions of people still connect with his first wife's suffering. The political and personal cost of that position is one Charles simply cannot afford, and sources say he is fully aware of that. But here is the part of Charles's position that sources describe as the most painful of all. He knows why William and Anne feel the way they feel, because he was there. He was the reason for it. He is the man who conducted the affair that Diana described in terms of deep personal devastation. He is the reason that grief exists. How do you argue against your son's grief over his mother when you are the reason that grief exists in the first place? How do you tell your sister that protecting your wife's position matters more than honoring the sister-in-law who suffered directly because of your own choices? Sources say Charles cannot make either of those arguments with genuine conviction because he does not fully believe them himself. There is a comment Charles allegedly made to a senior worker during this period that sources describe as quietly revealing. He did not express anger at William. He did not express frustration with Anne. He allegedly expressed understanding. The understanding of a man who knows that the people moving against his wife are doing so for reasons he himself created, and he has no answer for that. So what does all of this actually add up to? Because there is a version of this story that looks like revenge. William and Anne systematically taking apart everything Camilla built as payback for what she did to Diana. And there is another version that looks like something more thought through and more lasting than revenge. Sources say the second version is closer to the truth. Simple revenge would look like Camilla publicly humiliated, stripped of everything in one dramatic moment. That is not what sources describe William and Anne as building. What sources describe is more patient, more permanent, and ultimately more meaningful. Think about what Diana actually stood for, not the fairy tale image, but the real substance of what she did. She touched AIDS patients when the establishment was still treating the disease as something to be ashamed of. She walked through active minefields in Angola to make a political point about weapons killing civilians. She sat with homeless people and looked them in the eye. She treated them as fully human, in a way that senior royals simply were not supposed to do. She did all of this against the active resistance of an institution that found her emotional directness threatening, and her popularity destabilizing. She was right about all of it. The institution was wrong. And William knows this, not from reading books, but from his lived personal experience. He watched his mother be right, while the institution punished her for it. Now he runs the institution. Sources say William's modernization agenda is not simply good management practice. It is Diana, expressed through institutions. The emotional intelligence, she was told, was inappropriate. The public responsibility, she was told, was dangerous. The genuine human connection, she was told, was beneath the dignity of a senior royal. All of it allegedly being built into the design of the monarchy William is constructing. Anne's contribution runs alongside. Decades of quiet, genuinely impactful work that represents a living argument against fake royalty. The exact argument Diana made and paid everything to make. And here is what sources suggest. Camilla is slowly and painfully coming to understand. She won the battle. She got Charles. She got the title. She got the coronation, the tiara, and the seat beside the king. But the war was never about Charles. It was about Diana, and what Diana represented, and whether the institution Diana tried to change would eventually become something worthy of the price she paid. William and Anne are allegedly building that institution now, not for revenge, for Diana, and Camilla has no counter-strategy for that. You cannot argue against a legacy. You cannot take grief to court. You cannot outmaneuver a son who watched his mother die and spent 28 years deciding quietly and deliberately what to do about it. Diana never got to see what this monarchy could become. She got a Paris tunnel, 2 boys without a mother, and a family that barely lowered its flag. But sources suggest something is happening inside that palace right now that she never lived to see. Her son and her sister-in-law moving together, quietly and permanently, reshaping everything Camilla built into something Diana would have recognized as hers. Not revenge, something better than revenge. Legacy. And that, more than any property dispute or payroll decision or symbolic tiara, is what sources describe as Camilla's darkest reality in decades. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report to stay updated on all palace developments and inside stories from the heart of the monarchy.